सहना भवतु
सहना भवतु
सहनौ भुनक्तु
सहनं भुनक्तु
सह वीर्यं करवावहै
सह वीर्यं करवावहै
तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु
तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु
मा विद्विषावहै
मा विद्विषावहै।
ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
वसुदेवेन्द्रयोगीन्द्रम्
वसुदेवेन्द्रयोगीन्द्रं
नत्वा ज्ञानप्रदं गुरुम्
नत्वा ज्ञानं प्रदं गुरुम्
मुमुक्षूणां हितार्थाय
मुमुक्षामुत्थितार्थाय
तत्त्वबोधो विधीयते।
तत्त्वबोधो विधीयते।
वसुदेवेन्द्रयोगीन्द्रं नत्वा ज्ञानप्रदं गुरुम् मुमुक्षूणां हितार्थाय तत्त्वबोधोऽभिधीयते।
वसुदेवेन्द्रयोगीन्द्रं नत्वा ज्ञानं प्रदं गुरुं मुमुक्षूणामहितार्थाय तत्त्वबोधो विधीयते।
नित्यं शुद्धं निराभासं
नित्यं शुद्धं निराभासं
निराकारं निरञ्जनम्
निराकारं निरञ्जनं
नित्यबोधं चिदानन्दम्
नित्यबोधं चिदानन्दं
गुरुं ब्रह्म नमाम्यहम्।
गुरुं ब्रह्मा नमामि।
नित्यं शुद्धं निराभासं निराकारं निरञ्जनम्
नित्यं शुद्धं निराभासं निराकारं निरञ्जनम्
नित्यबोधं चिदानन्दं गुरुं ब्रह्म नमाम्यहम्।
नित्यबोधं चिदानन्दं गुरुं ब्रह्मा नमाम्यहम्।
साधनचतुष्टय सम्पन्ना
साधनचतुष्टय सम्पन्ना अधिकारिणां
मोक्षसाधनभूतम्
मोक्षसाधनभूतं
तत्त्वविवेकप्रकारम्
तत्त्वविवेकप्रकारं
वक्ष्यामः।
वक्ष्यामः।
साधनचतुष्टयं किम्?
साधनचतुष्टयं किम्?
नित्यानित्यवस्तुविवेकः
नित्यानित्यवस्तुविवेकः
इहामुत्रार्थफलभोगविरागः
इहामुत्र्यार्थफलभोगविरागः
समाधिषट्कसम्पत्तिः
समाधिषट्कसम्पत्तिः
मुमुक्षुत्वं चेति
मुमुक्षुत्वं चेति
नित्यानित्यवस्तुविवेकः कः
नित्यानित्यवस्तुविवेकः कः
नित्यावस्थेकं ब्रह्म
नित्यावस्थेवेकं ब्रह्म
तद्व्यतिरिक्तं सर्वमनित्यम्
तद्व्यतिरिक्तं सर्वमनित्यम्
अयमेव नित्यानित्यवस्तुविवेकः
अयमेव नित्यानित्यवस्तुविवेकः
Very good. So we are on this topic where we are trying to understand. I want to take you a little back first today so that we remember the context just now, what we are doing. The context has started from sadhana chatushtaya sampanna adhikarinam. What are the qualities? What are the means? What are the disciplines which are in the form of fourfold enumerated in a group of four? These are group of four is the means for what? For moksha. Is the means for moksha. So the fourfold qualities which we have started seeing in details are actually means for moksha, and for that sake is this entire topic which has initiated itself. So what were these fourfold qualifications? Sadhana chatushtayam kim. What are these four? Vivekaha, Vairagyam, Shatka Sampattihi, and Mumukshutvam. These are the four qualities. I'm repeating myself once again so that your mind gets clear of the context in which these four qualities have been enumerated. Moksha sadhana bhutam. For one's inner freedom. This inner freedom, you can take it in an absolute way, for which this is really the meaning. Absolute freedom means complete sense of complete liberation, absolute liberation, total liberation. And you can take it in a relative sense where you are mentally feeling free, not bound, not limited, and those, as much as you have the development of these qualities, so much you find inner freedom relatively. So both the contexts are here. The Vedanta has always stuck to the absolute context. Those, as much as one has developed these qualities in a relative sense, so much one also qualifies for the absolute freedom. So whoever has development of these four qualities, automatically you will find yourself more freer in life, in the vyavhar of life, in the conduct of transactions of life, in the way you manage your situations, in the way you manage your relations, in the way you look out at world and people, in the way you contact things. All these things automatically change. Why? Because the very faculty which engages itself in conduct of life, you have developed those faculties. Its absolute gain is absolute liberation. But what is the relative gain? Relative gain is that you find complete freedom in your capacity to view things and situations as your life keeps unfolding them. And therefore, obviously, how if your view changes, you will start making different choices. You will start determining things differently. When the base has been grounded of fourfold qualities as in the minimum state of mental maturity, naturally, everything you contact thereafterwards is bound to change because the person has grown from within. This is the context, and we are doing already covered a little ground in the first quality, which is Viveka. And Viveka, we said, discerning it, discernment capacity. It's a Shakti. You call averagely Vivek has been associated with Buddhi. Viveka Buddhi is what gets most commonly spoken of, which is correct because Buddhi mein hi to Vivek hota hai. And Buddhi itself is something which separates two things which are different in characteristic. But that separation on a simple level is just vichar. But when the two things have got mixed up and are appearing as one, उसको थोड़ा सा बारीकी से देखना, to be able to view it in a more subtle manner, to be able to discern the mixed up characteristics. For that you need a little more development of your buddhi, that shakti with which you separate the two which look like one is called Viveka Shakti. Now the question was asked by a student to the teacher. When teacher said these are the four qualities, adhikari kaun banega moksha ke liye? Who's qualified for it? When teacher said these are the four qualities, a student asked, but what is Vivek? Now presuming this question, answer Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivek. Now the question is, what is Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivek? And that definition is the crux of entire Vedanta. If this one thing is understood, till the very last bit of grasping of the subject, the foundation will be this statement. And everything that covers in this topic. Vivek mein, what is called Nitya or Anitya and Anitya. Nitya and Anitya ka separation is what is over here spoken of as Nitya Vastu Ekam Brahma. There is only one essential reality. There is only one essential truth. There is only one essential Satyam is the word today we will introduce. There is only one which is called Brahman. Brahman is not a name. It is not a description. It is not a quality. Brahman word only means that which is all expansive, limitless, expansive, whichever is. A limitless ever is called Nityam, जो हमेशा है. That Nityam is Brahman, characterized by something which is expansive, ever there, limitless, infinite. What about all this world that we see then? What about people and plants and animals and life and yugas and time and change and planets and me and you, and what is all this then? Whatever is Brahman alone is. Everything other than it that appears as there is anityam. Sarvam anityam. Tat vyatiriktam. Vyatirikt means उससे different, उससे separate, उसको अलग करो. उससे अलग तुम्हें जो कुछ भी लग रहा है, दिख रहा है, फील हो रहा है, कांटेक्ट हो रहा है, स्मेल हो रहा है, टेस्ट हो रहा है, टच हो रहा है, फीलिंग्स हो रही है, डाउट्स आ रहे हैं, सब कुछ, everything will fall in the category of it being anityam. What is nityam? That which is always there. And I said last class, by saying always there, on a very superficial hearing, we just feel वो हमेशा है. मगर अगर हम वर्ड्स को ध्यान से देखें तो हमेशा वर्ड itself ही तो टाइम है. Always means what? Means it should be there always. If always means in time, then time is not always, because the characteristic of time is that it is changing. वक्त बदलता है, constantly changing. उसका एक अपना law है. Time changes based on what? In fact, you feel time. Is there a real entity called time? That you feel time, that you can calculate it in terms of space and time, that physics tries to bring up this calculation of space-time factor. Wherever there is time, it is always in association with space. And wherever there is time and space, there are always events. There is always what science will call as causation. There is always something with reference to which there is time and space. There is a causation which is actually linking to time and space. Time, space, causation, all three are always together. You won't have a separate time without it being with association to something. In fact, it's a joke and it's quite common now in most public lectures and everywhere you will hear it. It's become very common term now. Time itself is measured in terms of second. What is the unit of time? Second. What do you mean by second? It's only with reference to the second that the time has arisen. If there is only one, there is no time. Because there is a second, that movement of the second is actually time. So many seconds we have then multiplied it, called it minute. So many minutes, means these are all now because the time seems to be rolling. What is rolling? Is it time that is rolling? There is a sequence of change that is constantly there. The events, the change is what is measured. For a unit of measurement of change is time, and change implies in space. Where is all this seen? All this is seen in space. We said in the last class, but point here is, where is space seen? Where is time and space seen? Where is it that you recognize causation? Is the causation independent of that factor which seems to be measuring it? Who's measuring the time? Who's measuring who's measuring space? Who's measuring space as in who's uh, marking space, coordinates, etc. Where is all this experienced? Is it in space, or is it somewhere where space also has a support? If the earth has a support of space, is space Brahman? Space is not Brahman because space itself is not the enlivening factor. Why is it not the enlivening factor? Because space is also perceived, is experienced. Space is not experiencing life. Life is experiencing space. Wherever there is life, you find yourself in space. Wherever there is life, you find yourself in time and causation. That where space is limitless, of course, to our perception, but space itself has the capacity to accommodate, in which life is flourishing. That has to be independent of time and space. Has to be, we have to say, because as our question came last time, if you say there is another factor which is also supportive of time, space, causation, then the question will be ad regress infinitum. The cycle is inconclusive. Inconclusive cycle is a flaw of thinking. If any thinking lands up in a cyclical manner, chicken and egg, which came first? It's an inconclusive question. You cannot determine which came first. In the same way, if you say space itself would have another factor which can be accommodative of space, etc., because space down everything, space is being all accommodative, everything else we are accommodating in space, therefore space को कौन accommodate कर रहा है? Whoever is accommodating space, then the question will be who's accommodating that plus space. Then the question will be who's accommodating that plus place, space plus, means that plus space, etc. So it's an endless cycle. That means wherever your thinking is reaching an endlessness in sight, it's creating a cyclical regress. That cyclical regress is called flaw in thinking. It can't be clarity. It will be no knowledge. It's as ambiguous. You don't know anything. So what is Vedanta saying? He says, this one factor, you can introduce as many in between, doesn't matter, but it must end somewhere. And where must it end? It must end in something which you can be aware of, which you can have knowledge of. That expansive, limitless entity is actually the living entity, livingness, that which contributes to consciousness, that which brings about the experience of life. Where there is only matter and you find life. When you say, even in certain fruits, and when you find the season has flowers, when you find the season has gone, and next season the same place another plant arises. You cannot see the latent seed in the soil, which is the potential of the entire plant. You're not seeing it. But as the season comes, that latency begins to express as movement. It begins to show signs of life. What is it that has contributed to this? That ekam is what we are calling as something which must have the characteristic of consciousness in English, but consciousness is more relatable, yes, to us, but it will also have a limit in understanding, because consciousness is awareness, yes, but this awareness we only identify as within this body. I am aware and I see you as a person, and I know you are aware of yourself. I see plants and animals, yes, they have awareness, self-awareness, but the question is, that awareness that you are expressing and I am expressing, are these two awarenesses? Is the quality of awareness, consciousness, that you are exhibiting, or I am exhibiting, or an animal is exhibiting, or a plant is exhibiting, or a microbe is exhibiting, an ant is exhibiting, a bacteria is exhibiting, virus is exhibiting, where there is life, we seem to be encapsulating, we seem to be expressive of consciousness, but limited as if to our own bodies and minds and thoughts, to our own individualities, to our own existence. To my birth and to my death, between that I am expressing awareness and consciousness. I seem to be limiting it. I can see you are aware. If you were not aware, how can I talk to you? I'm not talking to the table. I'm not talking to the laptop, which actually is seeming to be there in front of me. But I'm talking to something that is expressing through this inert, and when I see you moving there, I'm actually talking to that through inert and inert and inert as so many cycles of inert, but I'm talking to someone who's obviously conscious there. I'm talking to someone who also seems to exhibit consciousness. Now the question is this consciousness with which I am talking and the consciousness with which you are listening, are these two consciousnesses? And we multiply the number of people, say, in this class, the 20, 30, whoever, and plus whatever. Now, are we all as many consciousnesses as many bodies we are? Vedanta says no. The characteristic of consciousness, awareness that I exhibit as if limited to this body, when I see it limited to this body and I recognize it limited to me, that is ignorance. That is self-ignorance. That I am actually believing that consciousness is restricted to this little me. This is ignorance. But what is the real nature of this consciousness? I'll have to discover. And when I discover it with the help of the pointer that the Shastric study tells me, the pointer is, and I am able to verify it because it is not speculation, it is not a theory, it is not a hypothesis. When I recognize you as conscious and I break the boundary in my mind of the body that I find myself with, is this consciousness actually limited only to the body? And I realize no. I realize, as in the subject says, that quality or that consciousness, attribute, these are all words. Actually, neither is consciousness a quality nor is it an attribute. Consciousness is ever there. It is why we find it graded. Don't ask the question now. We'll take it up some other point of time. That it is there is the first grasp. Get this point digested enough. That consciousness is there. Nityam means free of time. time-space causation is limited to the awareness of this being here now. But Brahman is not conditioned consciousness, is not conditioned awareness, but this conditioned consciousness and awareness is actually of the nature of being all expansive. It's universal there, not only in life forms, it is universal, free of any expression. Nityam Ekam Brahman. That one alone, Nityam, ever there. Sarvam Anityam. Other than that, everything else is in the cycle of time, space, causation. Everything is in the sense of conditioned being. That is all Anityam. Wo aayega jayega. Because time will churn, events will churn, sequence will churn, your body will churn. It's that conveyor belt, my favorite example. As the first time when you go to an airport, and especially if you're a child, and the first time you go to an airport, it's a very fascinating experience because so far you're not flown anywhere, you've only seen it. But when you reach the airport, and what fascinates me, of course, when you come out of it is that conveyor belt. The flying is not so fascinating as the conveyor belt is fascinating to me. जो उस पे रखा है वो थोड़ी देर के लिए दिखा है, अगर आपका है आपने ले लिया, अगर आपका छूट गया और आपने नहीं देखा और छूट गया, वो घूमता रहता है, घूमता रहता है, घूमता रहता है, घूमता रहता है, कब तक, जब तक the operator doesn't switch off the belt or you don't pick it up. That conveyor belt is cycle of life. ये शरीर आएगा जाएगा आएगा जाएगा, मतलब दूसरा आएगा दूसरा जाएगा. You will be exact. That churning is what is ever there. It also looks nityam, as we said in one of the previous classes, I remember. That pravaha nityatvam is not the topic. If anybody remembers, pravaha nityatvam meant that changing, changeless thing that we see. That changing, changeless is not the nityam, that is Brahman. Brahman is that nityam which is free of this, and because of which you see this. It has to be there forever. And forever means free of time. Something that ever is existent is of the nature of consciousness because it has the quality, or because of that consciousness you get knowledge. And it has to be of the nature of pure anandam because nobody seeks unhappiness. It is this one Brahman that is the force of fulfillment. That is a force within each one of us. When from the glaciers, when you see the river forming, if anyone's gone to Gangotri and Gomukh, if anyone's seen that, or any river that starts, its glaciers are melting drop by drop, drop by drop, and by the time they have reached few kilometers ahead, few meters ahead, the drop by drop has already become a stream. A stream which is still something you can cross. But a little later, the stream forces itself stronger and stronger. And by the time it has reached the plains, it is a full-fledged river, much before, of course. It's a river. And there is a force in it. Where is this river headed? How did it get the force? How did it acquire the force? Why is it that that droplet over there, sun से ही तो पिघला है, वहीं से evaporate क्यों नहीं हो गया? I hope the questions. It's interesting to just imagine. It was a droplet. A droplet is easy to evaporate. It is because of the sun that the glacier evaporated in the first, melted in the first place. It melted. It could have evaporated there. But the flow of water, and point this, it is coming to an important point now. The flow of water is heading to the ocean. It is seeking a road to the ocean, a way to the ocean. So as the drop becomes drops, the ratio at which it melts, it doesn't become a stagnant pool of water there. It instantly, the force of melting pushes the water to where? What is determining that flow? Ocean is determining the flow. That life is pushing itself. Each one of us are generating our life force. For what? We are doing actions, we are doing feelings, we are doing everything. We are generating that life. For what? Where is the action propelling itself? What is it that we are aiming at? Vedanta says, Ekam Brahman. That Brahman which is actually your nature. Because if it was external, you could never have known it. That which is there is actually this conscious awareness, or you say this conditioned awareness. In this context was the word Atman. This conditioned awareness is Atman. This Atman is Brahman. And what are you as a what are you as a conditioned being, an individual doing all the time? Is actually only wanting your own fulfillment back. To discover your fulfillment back. That Brahman which is free of all this and yet supportive of all this, Ayameva, the one who is able to discern this Nityam and Anityam. क्या है मुझ में जो नित्य है और क्या है मुझ में जो अनित्य है? Is this body nitya? Are the thoughts nitya? Are my tastes, my likes, my relations, is anything of the nature of nityam? Is there anything nityam even? Actually, if you don't have the study of Vedanta, you can't even come to this question. I suspect that we as humans would come to the question if we did not have the support of this knowledge. Because what you find in the world is only changeless change. You would call that nityam. But when it begins to point to us, what am I completely made up of? You will realize that this awareness is where I can tap, and nitya anitya vastu becomes, is this awareness also anityam? Discovering its nature. The one who has this capacity to think. I started the class today by saying, let's remember the context. And the context is adhikaritva. Who will be able to be, who will manage to grasp the perception of what the knowledge is saying? That adhikari must have the capacity to think. Thinking along what line? Must have the capacity, means must have developed within himself the capacity to think in terms of permanent kya hai, impermanent kya hai, and choose based on, or at least be able to decide what is relatively permanent and relatively impermanent. And that is why I took the example of a very simple thing like a career choice, supposing. Even that will show you what that is only for development of the faculty. my capacity to perceive through what apparently looks like real. This capacity is Viveka, and it's a Shakti. That Viveka, the real another definition of it, or you call it to understand it a little more. Nityam is also Satyam. Vedanta says Nitya वही हो सकता है जो हमेशा है. What is हमेशा है? I'll take another. Abadhyatvam Satyatvam. Abadhyatvam word I'll take now, and then we'll come back to Satyatvam after doing the previous slide. Abadhyatvam means unnegatable. So what is Nityam? Nityam is that which is unnegatable. उसको हटाया नहीं जा सकता, उसको डिस्ट्रॉय नहीं किया जा सकता, उसको मिटाया नहीं जा सकता, उसको जलाया नहीं जा सकता, उसको ड्राउन नहीं किया जा सकता, उसको कुछ कर ही नहीं. आप उसको मतलब आप means the characteristic is such, it's pure existence which never can get negated. It can never become non-existence. When you see a pot, I said in the example of a pot and clay a few classes back, if anyone remembers, pot. Is pot nityam or anityam? It's anityam. What is nityam in pot? Clay. Why is clay nityam? Because it is clay which actually is looking like the pot. Pot अपने आप में कुछ भी नहीं है. Pot is all clay in that shape, which we call pot. Shape टूट गया, pot टूट गया. When the pot broke, the word pot also broke. It's now no longer applicable because वो pot ही नहीं है, तो word pot भी गया. But what is there now? Clay. But did the clay ever become non-existent when pot came? When pot was formed, when pot was created, the word, when pot got created, it always remained clay. Clay did not get into non-existence. The clayness did not change itself. The clayness remained clay. Even if you paint it, you paint, but you're painting on clay. Clay doesn't change its color. Paint is added, but clay remained clay. So in this relative example, pot is sarvam anityam because it's badhitam. It's breakable. It is there today. It may not be there tomorrow. That badhitam word is an important word. जिसका भी बाध हो सकता है, what can be changed, what can be broken, what can be destroyed, what can be burnt, what can be drowned, what can be finished, what can be exhausted, what can become redundant, what can actually become negligible. Any word you use, the fact is, what it appears as today, there is no guarantee that it will be the same at another point of time. It is subject to change. And not only is it subject to change, it is subject to complete destruction. The California fires, there was an interesting, I think it's a blog that I saw. A person whose house was just probably somewhere close by where the fires are. She had put up a picture of a beautiful trekking trail there in the forests. That she'd spent her childhood in those trails. The family would go for picnic along those trails. And she spent the whole childhood of hers being on those trails, means looking forward to those holiday picnics and things like that. One word she wrote, sentence she wrote, it's all gone. That sentence, even when I read that sentence, only this comes to your mind. That trail with which she lived for so long, and those Californian trees were, some of them are so old that they're as good as taken as, there are very many thousands of years some trees are. One word, gone. It's all gone. And the family is mourning it because they can't believe it's all now grazed to ground. What is Nityam? Is the tree, even if it's 1,000 years, Nityam? No. I'm bringing a lot of ideas, but I'm happy that you're all digesting it. The few of you are really digesting it. So it's encouraging me to go ahead. Is tree Nityam? No. What was Nityam compared to tree? Fire. Fire engulfed it. It could graze it. What could actually destroy fire? Water could. Water can. Water will be more to destroy it. Fire is of course more pervasive than water is, but what is it? Where is it? Fire, water? Planet. You go back. This is not the exact krama, but just for reflection. You go back. Who is the one who's registered it all? The 1,000-year-old tree could do nothing to protect itself. It's destroyed. Here, the context is, jiska baadh hota hai, which is subject to being negated, which is subject to destruction, which is subject to change, is called a Nityam. That which is Nityam is actually a Badhyam. You cannot negate it, and that is why it is Nityam. So you did not come up with the word Nityam and proposed it. There is a reason to say why it is Nityam. Thinking is along that line, that it should be a Badhyam. That nothing can affect it, nothing can change it, nothing can destroy it, nothing can work on it. Is there any such thing a human being can ask? Shastra says there is. And that's a great relief. What is there? That is Satyam. That is Brahman. That Brahman alone is Satyam. Why is it Satyam? Because what is called truth, the definition of truth is it should persist in all periods of time. And what persists in all periods of time, we have already established, must be free of the influence of time. Therefore must be free of time. So Satyam, the English translation is truth. सत्यम क्या है? एकम ब्रह्मन. Alone is satyam, and that satyam is understood because it is abadhyam, and that abadhyam is a point of your reflection, is a point of your experience, is a point to recognize in experience. It must be abadhyam. This verse that we are seeing here is another where Nitya Anitya Vastu Viveka is also defined. This is a text called Viveka Chudamani. Just as remember in the initial classes, there are many Prakarna Granthas, introductory texts. One of the names I took was Viveka Chudamani. This definition of Nitya Anitya Vastu Viveka is from Viveka Chudamani. And what does it say? Brahma Satyam. What is the previous definition we saw? नित्य वस्तु एकम ब्रह्म तत् व्यतिरिक्तम सर्वम अनित्यम. उससे अलग सब कुछ जो भी है वो अनित्य है. Now look at the way this definition incorporates. That Brahman is Satyam. What he said as Tat Vyatiriktam. What is Tat Vyatiriktam? Jagat. Whatever comes in the word Jagat, वर्ल्ड, यूनिवर्स, कॉस्मोस, आप जगत वर्ड में सब डाल दो. वट एवर कम्स इन जगत मिथ्या. ब्रह्मन इज सत्यम. तत् व्यतिरिक्तम अनित्यम. वट इज व्यतिरिक्तम? जगत. जगत इज anityam. And what is anityam? This jagat is of the nature of rupaha, is of the nature of mithya. Iti evam rupaha. This is all sandhi. I'm breaking the words. Jagat, because of sandhi, it has become jagan. It is jagat mithya. Iti evam rupaha vinishtaha. To discern. To discern what? Brahman alone is Satyam. Jagat is Mithya. And to come to the word Mithya means that Satyam is one, Nityam. What is Anityam? He has brought in new set of words here. Opposite of Satyam is Mithya. The previous two words are Nitya, Anitya. Now that we've got familiar with this. Nitya, Anitya. Nitya means it must always be there. Always be there automatically implies abadhitam. That abadhyatvam of it means it is the definition of Satyam. वही real है. जो नित्य है, that alone is real. That changeless alone is real. What is anityam? Is actually Jagat. Vyatirikta from Brahman is Jagat. Seen separate, seeming separate. Jagat, and it is Mithya. Saha ayam nitya anitya vastu viveka samudahritaha. This word, it just means it's well ascertained. Means what is called really doing discernment. Remember I said two things are mixed up into one which you have to separate. What are you seeing in the world? Just the world. You see yourself coming and going. I'm born, I will die. In between, I have a life where I cry more, or I laugh more, or I'm joyful more, but I'm seeking something, I'm seeking, ever seeking. मालूम नहीं मुझे क्या चाहिए. This is the right statement actually. मालूम ही नहीं मुझे क्या चाहिए. क्योंकि जो चाहिए थोड़ी देर के लिए लगता है कि ये चाहिए, फिर वो मिल जाता है, फिर आई एम नॉट सेशिएटेड स्टिल, फिर मुझे फिर से कुछ और चाहिए, पता नहीं मुझे क्या है. when what do you want? When we ask someone, what is it that I asked you a few classes ago? If you can even come up with an answer, what really do you want? What are you looking for? That nitya nitya vastu vivekaha. Now I am coming to, I'm going to take few minutes more just to elaborate. This satyam, nitya anitya vastu, starts as अंडरस्टैंडिंग नित्य क्या है, अनित्य क्या है. वी हैव कम टू अंडरस्टैंडिंग कि जो नित्य है वही सत्य है. मीन्स इफ समवन आस्क्स मी, डू यू अंडरस्टैंड व्हाट इज द ट्रुथ? In English, if you ask, people say, you keep talking of truth and truth. What is truth? If somebody is just asked this question, do you really believe there's something called truth? Truth has absolute truth? We all understand the relative truths. जो तुम्हारे लिए सच है वो मेरे लिए सच नहीं है, जो मेरे लिए सच है वो तुम्हारे, ये तो समझ में आता है. But is there something called absolute truth, changeless truth, which should be applicable to everyone, which should be applicable to all times? Is there something like that? Most people don't bother to think this part because it's a taxing of your faculty. Is there some, after understanding this, you can never say that you don't know what is truth. Yes, there is truth. And there is a reason to say that. Because there is something which remains ever existent in all periods of time, and that is the definition of truth. That is Brahman. And that Brahman actually is this. Seemingly today I don't understand this. That is why there is self-ignorance about it. I don't see how this consciousness and awareness that I'm expressing, which is helping me to hear and to understand and helping me to talk and live my life and all that, but I have never inquired on this nature of awareness. I've never bothered to really question it. I've never bothered to know, because even if I bother, there don't seem to be any answers. Nobody seems to be knowing it. Till, I would say, some anugraha falls on us and Vedanta comes in our life and we suddenly hear this, and then penny drops. For those who have had jnana before, for those who are seeking the knowledge, understand how essential this portion is, because it's only in this portion that you finally come to rest, because now there is an answer. Yes, there was an absolute truth. There is an absolute truth. There will always remain an absolute truth. Now the question comes is, then what do I see here? ये जो मुझे वर्ल्ड में सब रियल लगता है, जो मेरा मैं रियल लगता है, मुझे मारोगे तो लगेगी. You cannot deny that. Or you give me one bad word, you insult me, it will hurt me. Is this all not real? Is my want for happiness not real? What is, if you say there is only one changeless real, then what am I experiencing as real in all this world? What is this changeless real that I know as real? What is that? To know that is the word mithya, the second word. What is satyam is changeless. But what is appearing real and is changing is mithya. I'll repeat this. What is changeless, real, is satyam. But what is appearing real and is changing? Am I not real? But am I also not changing? A person will ask. The world is real? The world is changing? What is this category then? That word is mithya. And we are going to now conclude the cycle Abadhyatvam, satyatvam is the definition. And the same thing you go further to understand what is mithya. I'm going to introduce this and try and finish it even if it takes a little extra, because then tomorrow we can spend time to revise it. Definition of mithya is what is seen but is actually not existent in its origin, place of origin. It has no existence in its place of origin. Swabhava adhikarane. Adhikarane means in its substratum, in its place. उसके स्वभाव से भासमानत्वम, वो भासित हो रहा है, दिख रहा है. You are seeing something, but it is only bhasatvam. In its own place, it is not there. The second definition, swa adhisthana nishtha atyanta abhava pratiyogitvam. अपने ही अधिष्ठान में जहां वो चीज दिख रही है, उसी चीज का उस अधिष्ठान में अत्यंत अभाव है. अत्यंत मीन्स ऑलवेज, एंडलेस. अभाव मीन्स एब्सेंस. मीन्स जहां मुझे वो चीज दिख रही है, बट एक्चुअली उसके स्थान में वो चीज है ही नहीं. And never there. The simple example, I am seeing pot in clay. Adhishthan of pot is clay. But in clay, is the pot existent? Is it there? Clay है. क्या है? क्ले है. बट पॉट दिख रहा है ना, मेरे सामने तो पॉट है. दिस पॉट दैट आई एम सीइंग, डू आई सी पॉट इन क्ले? Potness is actually bhasatvam. And its actual presence as pot is not there in clay. Pot is not an entity real. Clay is the real entity. Clay is really there, because if it was not for clay, there would be no pot. And if it was not for pot, what will I drink water in? So pot seems to be real. But in its place of origin, it is perpetually absent, non-existent. To understand this, I'm bringing back the example that we introduced a few classes back. What do you see here? Snake or rope? To some of us it felt rope, to some of us we saw snake. Now bring this example here. In this context, what are you seeing is actually snake. Suddenly if you get the perception of snake, is the snake, firstly, where is the snake seen? In place of rope, on the rope. The real thing is rope. It's actually a rope. But somehow you saw it as a snake for a moment, because there's a mix-up. It could be snake, it could be rope. You'll have to discern, see carefully, examine it a little more. ये तो picture है, but अगर आपको कहीं, the story in Vedanta is a very interesting story. I'll elaborate another time. If you are physically there, you will have to explore it. जाके उसको डंडे से उठाओगे, कुछ करना पड़ेगा ना, तो मेक श्योर आपको डाउट आ रहा है रोप है कि स्नेक है. So you will have to figure it out whether this is, what is it. If it's snake, very harmful, you better protect yourself. If it's rope, very useful, no danger. You can use it. Your whole approach will change if you know what it is. Every statement I'm saying has so many layers of unfoldment behind actually. Now the minute you know this is rope, your approach to it can change. But if you see it as snake, and if it is snake, your approach will change. Question that Vedanta addresses is, answers is, what is real? The world that I see, is this real? Looks real to me. Life looks real to me. Pain and suffering here is real. Hunger is real. Anger is real. Hurt is real. Relations are real. My wants is real. Everything is real. Real, 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 real. Do you see the Tanpura behind? That Shruti behind? Real, real, real. Did from your cognition ever the sense of reality disappear for a moment? To such an extent that when you sleep, in your sleep, you experience nothing, not even your own self. But in your sleep, when you wake up, can you deny the reality of the sleep? तुम तो थे ही नहीं ना वहां पे. The body was not there. You as an individual was not there. But when you woke up, you said, I slept. All that real, 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 real. I'm going to repeat it till your ears hear it. Real, real. सबके पीछे हमारा एक तानपुरा श्रुति. That sapasa, sapasa, sapa. Those who know classical music goes on sapasa. Replace it with real, real. Everything seems to be around real. But on examination, everything seems to replace each other. My sleep doesn't last forever. I dream. My dream doesn't last forever. I'm awake. My waking doesn't last forever. I again sleep. The world seems real, changing ever, etc., etc. All that is looking real but is changing is essentially absent in the real. Therefore, it is that anityatvam of it is explaining away its non or unreal or non-reality. But when we say unreal word, we take it as object. But what is unreal? In English, unreal is actually mithya. It's not real, but it's appearing real. I can't deny its experience. I cannot deny that the pot has helped me store water. All this world is actually mithya because this seeming one, you will recognize on discernment the substratum on which the whole world seems to be seen. This consciousness, awareness on which I am seeing the world, this consciousness, awareness is of the nature of Brahman, and everything else seen is mithya. Satya mithya viveka. Nitya, Anitya, Vastu, Vivekaha. This is real Vivek. A student's capacity, a person's capacity to think along the lines, to appreciate really what is real and what is unreal, what is truth and what is false, appearing truth. To be able to discern in a simple example like this, is this rope or is this snake? Because both seem to be having a common locus. In the same place I'm seeing snake, and in the same place is this snake? When I examine, I find it's rope. Rope is ever existent. It is, in this context of example, rope is nityam. But when I saw snake, that snake was anityam, mithya. This we end for today, and I will revise this. We will take this up again tomorrow, the whole idea, and kind of bring it together for us to absorb it a little more.